the silver ETF is being drained. And at some point, it's going to have to become acknowledged there's very little, if anything, there. I've also speculated that it's possible, considering how low these people are, that there could be some mineral sites in Mexico, Peru, maybe other countries that are being mined with convict labor to supply the market. Now, I don't know this. I'm speculating. I don't know. I think these people are capable of anything, to go to any length to keep this scam going longer and longer.
It's been 115 years since investors had an opportunity like this. The Rockefellers, the Vanderbilts, and Henry Ford made a fortune from the last energy-powered vehicle revolution. Let's seize the moment in the hottest sector in the world right now. Visit crushthestreet.com/win.
Hello, everyone, and welcome in to crushthestreet.com. I am Kenneth Amaduri, and today we are talking with Charles Savoie of silverstealers.net, and he's just released a 25,000 plus word encyclopedia on the Texas Bullion Depository, and cover to cover it goes over facts and just a discussion of what no one else is talking about, and we're going to talk about that here today. Charles is on the line. Charles, thanks for joining me.
I'm happy to be here, Kenneth.
Well, on June 12th, 2015, Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed into law the HB 483 Texas Bullion Depository Act, providing for a precious metals bank under the auspices of the state of Texas. So, Charles, let's start off with the conventional background as to why this is being presented to the people as a good thing.
I think there's a lot of discontent with the Federal Reserve dollar, or Federal Reserve petrodollar, which it actually is, because people see that purchasing power just continues to skid and skid and skid, and they're looking at tremendous concern about the national debt, about to break through the $20 trillion mark, and they're worried about pensions, they're worried about their standard of living, they're worried about what can they grab hold of that won't go broke.
And this is giving people an opportunity to deposit their funds and deposit their precious metals. And Texas is basically giving a hat tip to the fact that the federal government is on a direction, on a road to disaster.
Yes, that's correct. But we have to understand that, see, I've looked at a lot of websites, Ken, about this situation, and I haven't seen anybody really plunge into it and pick it apart. There's some very bad influences trying to get hold of this. For instance, the state comptroller, Glenn Hagar, however he pronounces it, not only him, but the bill's primary sponsor, Giovanni Capriglione, who's virtually local to me, they both said that they're interested in getting an outside firm to manage the depository, I assume under the auspices or supervision of the state comptroller's office. And we have to tread like we're on thin ice with this, because there's all kinds of the money power never sleeps. It's been there since this country began in colonial times. It's never gone away. It's connected by a bizarre spider web of genealogies. It's always in the background. It overarches the state like a monumental spider web, but it is centered in Manhattan. And these interests are trying to come in and subvert the Bullion Depository from what it should be to something that they want it to be, which we've got to really watch the trap doors and the back doors in this situation to see that nobody tunnels in and corrupts this situation.
Well, let's talk about that. Obviously, it's very attractive. A Texas Bullion Depository, it piques the interest of people who question government, and it's widely trumpeted as pro-freedom. But as you say in your write-up here, it contains some offensive flaws. So let's expand on this a little bit. What are the offensive flaws that put people at risk here?
Okay, Ken. Well, first of all, I want everybody to understand I certainly have no goal to disparage the Bullion Depository. Rather, the goal is to call the dross out of the situation. You know, nobody wants roaches in their cornmeal.
Right.
If people thought everything was flashing green lights, I regret to describe otherwise. There is work to be done, and all interested Texans and metals long everywhere should get busy once informed of the deplorable hitches in this development.
Deplorable.
And just to start with, what I've mentioned, that this business about having an outside firm come in and manage it, hey, that's a red light and a siren going on right there. But if you look in the language of the bill, people were really revved up like crazy where it said, Uncle Sam, the federal government, the D.C. crowd, they can't come and grab the silver, they can't come and grab the gold or the other contents of the Bullion Depository. But if you continue reading, it says, other than by an authority of this state. It says so twice, that the state of Texas can come and take what you put into the depository. The feds can't do it, but the state government can do it. It's all there in my write-up. It's going to be posted this evening. First of all, it's Silver Market News Online, and it's 29,999 words. That's where I stopped. Okay, and I have put 460 hyperlinks into this, 131 illustrations into this, a great deal of history, all kind of documentation. I'm talking about all kinds of people involved that we cannot possibly cover all that in a limited time interview. And people should take the time to go through this and digest it, and maybe set up 3 or 4 sessions in an evening once they can start viewing it this evening, and copy the link and just click onto the link when they're ready to do.
We're going to have the link for everyone to be able to link over to that. So, Charles, when it comes to Texas, at this point, would you say that Texas is the place and the safest place to be storing the people's bullion? I mean, people are very attracted to Texas.
Actually, no. And the reason is, if you go to the Institute for Justice, anyway, it's in the documentary, Texas is currently rated a D or a D minus on the matter of civil asset forfeiture, where the state government can come in and say, hey, we suspect you committed a crime, so we're going to confiscate your property. And you're not being accused of anything. The property is being accused, and we're not going to charge you with anything, but the property is going to be charged. This is completely ridiculous. It's against the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. I've moved the majority of my silver to New Mexico several months ago because they rescinded civil asset forfeiture. You have to be convicted of a felony before the state government can take your assets. Now, the city of Albuquerque is being horsey about it, and the state government has filed a lawsuit against the city of Albuquerque because they don't want to go along with state law, which definitely holds sway over municipal law. But there are other people saying that, hey, be cautious about entering the Texas Bullion Depository. Let me give you an example. When procedures came out, medical procedures some years ago, to do a radial keratotomy on your eyes, and then later became laser, to be able to discard glasses and contacts, the smart folks said, hey, I'm not going to just jump into this. I'm going to wait several years till there's a large body of feedback from consumers. If it looks good, then I'll jump in, see? So, Ken, there's so many problems. For instance, most of the what we call the Texas Gold that's waiting to be moved out of HSBC Bank, New York, to go into the depository is actually owned by UTIMCO, the University of Texas Investment Management Company. And Ken, UTIMCO is riddled with spooks. The spooks there is retired Admiral McRaven, kind of a funny name. He's chancellor of the UT Austin system, and he's also on the directors of UTIMCO. Well, Mr. McRaven is a director of the Council on Foreign Relations in New York, which is the primary subsidiary organization to the group that I've been specializing in for quite a few years, which calls itself the Pilgrims Society. I've got quite a bit of information about the Pilgrims Society in the Bullion Depository write-up. It's a group that came into being in 1903, the USA branch, and basically what it does, it connects us to the British banking system. It's widely known that the Federal Reserve is a stepchild to the Bank of England. And the USA Wall Street financial community is subsidiary to the City of London financial community. But they're trying to get a foothold. Well, anyway, the Utimco Gold and the Utimco Board of Directors, maybe not all, but apparently the preponderance of the board is saying, hey.
So we just dropped the call. We're jumping right back in. Charles, continue where you left off.
Anyway, the majority of the Utimco board is saying, hey, we don't want the Utimco Gold being moved out of HSBC New York to a facility in Texas. Oh, unless the Texas facility is going to be directly linked to the COMEX system. But see, that's in defiance with the bill that created the Bullion Depository to start with. There's language in the bill that says, hey, we don't want swaps, we don't want derivatives, we don't want leasing, blah, blah, blah. So really, we've got a number of board members of Utimco that should be ousted.
Yeah, I mean, Texas, it's such a great state, and the cockroaches are infiltrating the state, and really, in many ways, Texas is the country's last stand. I mean, and it's being overran by, in many ways, people that are not going to be in it for the best interests of the future of Texas and the future of the country. But Charles, let's talk about the depository a little bit more here and people's interests. I mean, are we seeing a lot of people and people around the world interested in depositing their precious metals and bullion and jewelry in this depository?
Well, State Representative Capriglione, who was the spearhead of this bill, I contacted him one time by email, and Ken, I mentioned the Pilgrims Society several times, and he acted like, huh? What? Well, anyway, he did mention to me that a lot of people have deluged him from a lot of jurisdictions, other states, other countries, about the Bullion Depository, and yeah, there's a lot of interest, and I sent messages to about 36 Tea Party groups all over the state. I only got a response from one group, but it was, I think, the biggest group of the bunch. So I don't know, maybe they're just waiting to see the document come out. But yeah, there's a lot of interest in this, and there should be. And I want to see it go forward, and I want to see the environment in which the Bullion Depository will exist to be a purified environment, starting with, we got to get rid of civil asset forfeiture in the state of Texas in all 254 counties in all forms.
Yeah. Well, one of the things in the write-up that you put here is that, will they use the war on drugs as a way to seize people's precious metals that are stored in the Bullion Depository? Would you care to explain this a little more?
Well, Ken, we've already seen that apparently we're protected from federal theft, but like I say, in two places in the bill, I think it's section 2116.023, there's a hyperlink in the document. You can go to it, look it up, other than by an authority of the state. So we have to be protected from all layers of government. Now, if somebody commits an arson, if somebody commits a murder, a rape, felony, whatever, then yeah, I don't care if you take everything they own, but if somebody hasn't been charged and convicted with a felony, that's one of the basics that this country broke away from Great Britain, was the basics of private property. And the movie The Patriot, where the redcoat says, this is the king's highway, we've got to get away from that.
So an interesting point that you brought up in the piece, and really an unintended consequence that Trump has been running on regarding the wall, and I'll read it off the quote is, President Trump must be notified by all mining share investors that if he intends to build a border wall and make Mexico pay for it, he must additionally place Mexico on notice to not retaliate by seizing foreign-owned mineral sites, nor increasing royalties, state or federal, nor ban export of concentrates, or refined metals. So regarding the U.S. here, should Trump be considering these unintended consequences of his platform?
Well, absolutely. Any major move by the government should be thought through, hopefully very deliberately before action is taken. And it's unpredictable what people will do in response, but they're perfectly capable of saying, hey, if you're going to do that to us and make us pay, we're going to grab these mineral sites and use that to pay with.
Sure.
So the way I'm looking at it is, I don't know how many tens of millions of Mexican immigrants, say not quite legal, there has been over the last 30 years or whatever, but the U.S. has acted as a safety valve or an overflow, however you want to look at it, from Mexico. And many of these people, when they get up here, they send money back to relatives in Mexico. So we've done that for them, and they don't need to be retaliating against us.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. Charles, regarding anything else that we've discussed in this interview, is there anything else that you wanted to leave our audience with regarding silver, precious metals, the Texas Bullion Depository, before we end the call here?
Oh, geez, there's so many aspects. Okay, let's talk about the supply of physical silver. Where is it coming from? How can the short sellers feed world demand month after month after month after month after month, sub-$20 silver, on and on and on? Well, obviously, or at least it's obvious to me, that the silver ETF is being drained. And at some point, it's going to have to become acknowledged there's very little, if anything, there. I've also speculated that it's possible, considering how low these people are, that there could be some mineral sites in Mexico, Peru, maybe other countries, that are being mined with convict labor to supply the market. Now, I don't know this. I'm speculating. I don't know. I think these people are capable of anything, to go to any length to keep this scam going longer and longer. And so that's what I think about physical silver. Oh, one other thing about physical silver. There can be no dispute that the supply of bullion is much greater than the supply of coin silver. And I've always advocated that people buy coin where they can. For instance, if you have 100 ounce bar of silver, but if you have 1,400 dimes, 90% dimes, you have the same amount of silver in those dimes, but it's a more fractionated investment. You have more maneuverability with that. You can't take a silver bar and treat it like a stick of butter and just whack off a piece when you need to.
That's right.
Okay, now.
Hey, and to be honest with you, and that's where Federal Reserve notes came from. And that was the beginning of the scam.
And there's a board member of the UTIMCO, Mr. Adams, and he is involved with the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Its stated goals are liberty, personal responsibility, and free enterprise. However, guess who is the chair of the Texas Public Policy Foundation?
Who's that?
God help us. God help us. It's Wendy Graham, the former head of the CFTC from 88 to 1993, and she was a board member of Enron.
Oh, my gosh.
So, the UTIMCO board needs to be purged, it needs to be ousted. Now, I looked at Kyle Bass pretty in-depth, and he seems to be let's say, probably one of the better ones. However, I find it very disappointing that he went up to New York and he asked three times, to take a tour and look at the gold, and he's saying, hey, here's ingot number XYZ over here. Then they take him into another area, and here's number ABC over here, and it's in different places. And, this is it's so wrong. And see, when they passed the depository legislation over a year ago, the governor signed it. At that point, they should have told HSBC, look, we want all the Timco bullion back within a month, and we're going to store it in a basement in Austin, Texas, and we're going to secure that basement with units of the Texas National Guard. Perfectly feasible idea. Why didn't they do that? Because at some point, there's going to be a run on gold, and whoever knocks on the door last, the first 2% that knock on the door may get served, and then the gold window is going to close. And everybody else is out, see? And some of these crooks may fly away to jurisdictions that don't have any extradition treaties. And, but yeah, there's a lot of intrigue and subversion going on with the bill, and with, for instance, a lot of people are offering to store the gold for Texas. They're saying, hey, you don't want to store it in Texas. Let us store it for you in New York. There's a company called Unintended, and they're in a controversy in Switzerland right now. It's tied up in the Swiss courts. I've seen no news on it, dated more recently than 2014. There's a South African diamond dealer with a $50 million pink diamond, and he's saying that Malcolm Mitt just gave it to somebody else without permission, and they say, oh, no, we didn't do that, blah, 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 it's in the Swiss courts. And then Malcolm Mitt says, hey, that diamond is only worth $5 million anyway. So it sounds like a bunch of chiselers to me. And then there's Brinks. Well, Brinks has a great reputation, but one of the key officials of Brinks is a trustee of Colgate University, and that's the shaving cream and toothpaste fortune. But it goes to other people back in the 1870s that were connected with gold subversion right after the crime of 1873. This is very deep subject. It's very... here's one more thing. The Peterson Institute for International Economics in D.C. has badmouthed moving Texas Gold out of the New York banking system, and guess what? Lynn Forrester de Rothschild is one of the trustees of the Peterson Institute.
Wow.
Yeah. Former Commerce Secretary Peter Peterson, billionaire founder of the Blackstone Group, founder of the Peterson Institute. He's a Pilgrims Society member who took over the role as chairman of the CFR after David Rockefeller retired in 1985. Paul Volcker's there. He's a member of the Pilgrims. George Schultz, he's a member, blah, blah, blah. Douglas Flint, chairman of HSBC London, is a director of the Peterson Institute. And the USA subsidiary of HSBC is storing the Timco gold. And they're saying through this flunky Edwin Truman, he's an economist, that, hey, wait, there's no point in moving the gold to Texas.
Wow. Yeah, to say the least, there's many offensive flaws here that we can be discussing. Charles, I want to thank you for coming on the show here. And really just pointing out something here that is being really trumpeted as pro-freedom, and something that, many of us, people very interested in gold and silver and bullion and protecting our metals and, wanting the government going in a pro-gold environment, getting away from the fiat Ponzi scheme, some of the things to be concerned about, because it sounds very pro-freedom, but there's some things that we do need to be aware of, and you did that, and you articulated that.
Let me just make a couple of real juicy points, so it'll just be brief.
All right.
The majority of the people that are spearheaded the bill are also in favor of private ownership of guns, And these people that are against the gold coming to Texas are against gun ownership.
Ah.
And I've got a few lines of poetry I'll read you. Texas, cheated by funny money for years and years, sickeningly coming at her like English cavaliers, meddling demands by New York financiers. Do you want to give your gold to racketeers? Now let me tell you one more thing, and I'm going to shut up. We've had great gold and silver people in the past. There's nothing that says we couldn't get them again if we really got to work behind this situation and purify the bill, purify the environment of the bill, keep the bad elements out of Texas. President Martin Van Buren, special congressional session message on September 4, 1837 said, of my own duties under the existing laws, when the banks suspended specie payments, that's payments in gold and silver, I could not doubt. Directions were immediately given to prevent the reception into the treasury of anything but gold and silver. And every arrangement was made to preserve the public faith by equivalent payments to the public creditors. And the other one is Idaho Silver Senator William Borah, who became known as the Great Opposer for blocking American entry into the British-controlled League of Nations after World War I, and for whom the state of Idaho's highest mountain is named, said, in all calmness and deliberation, I consider that the action of the international bankers in demonetizing silver and virtually destroying the purchasing power of over 800 million people was one of the most brutal acts ever committed in history.
Well, I like what you said there. There is hope for people and people who want pro-gold, pro-silver, pro-bullion leaders in our government if people speak loud enough. And I think President Trump, and say what you will about him, is someone, President-elect Trump, is something that people should see as, hey, you know, there are ways to disrupt the establishment, and he was an example of that. Brexit was an example of that. And you can thank the alternative media and just the internet in general for truth rising to the surface. And this is one of those examples. And you are a truth teller, Charles. So we're going to be sure to have the link for everyone to be able to access your new report in the description area. Charles, thanks so much for coming on the show.
And please, everybody, send the research to your own state senators and state representatives, regardless of what states you live in.
Will do. Again, sir, thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks, Ken.